Hey everybody, welcome. Today is a day I'm in Stunt Hangar West. As you can see, this is my normal workshop, not in Dayton, but we're going to do landing gear blocks. I get a lot of questions on how to do those, and now Bob Hunt, he does have videos that show how to do that, but I'm going to show how to do it right here today. So let's get to it. Okay, this is what the landing gear block looks like installed here, and on the other side I have one that's hasn't been done, and I'm going to show you the parts that you need. Now I'm going to be making the doors in another segment that capture the landing gear wire in the wing, but well, we might get to that today, I don't know. So anyway, we're going to do the other side, so let's take a look. Now if you look, this is the pocket that's prepared. There's a balsa rib here, and it's sheeted with a 1/16 inch piece of plywood, as shown here. Right here. Which one are we on? Oh, here we go. Right here. That's 1/16 plywood on the 3/32 rib. There's a notch cut down, and the wires, the lead outs, run behind the block. So I should have started this when I laid out the ribs, but you make a false rib, and the rib goes from the spar here forward, so it's a quarter rib or half rib with the notch in it to accept the plywood floor. Now this isn't the plywood floor, this is just a pattern. We're going to have to make a plywood floor up, and I'll do that off camera. And I'll show you how to set that up so that you can accept the landing gear wire. So give me a minute, I'll make a plywood floor and we'll be right back. Okay, on this particular operation, I've cut my 7-ply aircraft plywood to the right size to fit in the hole. I also have some basswood strips here that we're going to put on this piece of plywood. Now I would suggest that you have the grain running this direction here. You want it, the grain on this balsa wood kind of explains it a little better. The grain is running fore and aft, and it captures the wire. So what I normally do, we're not building a watch here. I mean, you can get as accurate as you want. I just take a piece of 1/8 inch wire. Let me zoom this out a little bit. I just take a piece of 1/8 inch wire, put one of the pieces of basswood parallel to the block, put the 1/8 inch piece of wire in there, and butt up the basswood pieces that I've cut out, centered onto the landing gear mount as so. You want to keep that pretty parallel. Now I just take, you know, you might want to epoxy it, I don't know. I've never epoxied them. I've just used thin set CA, and it's seemed to work pretty well for me. And I wick that in there on that side. Turn it over. Making sure the wire's tight, it's captured there. Wick it in there on that side. And then we're going to take the wire up. So now we have a good tight fit of this wire in that groove. I go ahead and wick CA on the inside as well. That way we know we got plenty of glue inside there. Like I say, I've never had a problem using CA, but you may want to use epoxy. I then take the balsa wood filler strips that I've cut, and you see these are only 1/4 inch wide, these strips. I do that for weight. You gotta leave parts out. Basswood is heavier than balsa wood, so then I got some 1/8 inch balsa wood that we're going to fill that 1/8 inch spot with. So I just put it in there. Remember, the grain is running fore and aft into the wire. You don't want the grain running parallel with the wire because that's the weakest point. So you want to, oh, glue stuck to my finger. You want to kind of engineer this to work in your favor. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a little kicker. Turn it over and do the other side. I know I had another piece cut here. Oh, there it is. Like I say, if you want to use epoxy for all this, you can. It's just heavier. Try to make all the joints as tight as possible. Everybody knows I like light. I don't want to... Glue is heavy. You don't want to fill it up with glue. This is a pretty quick, easy, simple way to do landing gear blocks. So now I'm going to walk over to the bit sander and kind of clean these things up, and I'll show you when I get back. So we'll be back in a second. Okay, I've gone ahead and cleaned this block up on the belt sander, sanded the edges square, and faced it off. This block will fit in here like so. Now you wonder, well, what's going to hold the wire? Well, I use motor mount material to hold the wire from springing, and how I do that is I center this up. Now we have plywood, the plywood doubler rib that I told you about, and you want the piece of motor mount to sit on that plywood rib. So from the top I mark it, and then we're going to take it out. Trace it to the other side. We'll draw a line. And the motor mount piece of maple is going to sit right, epoxy. I do recommend using epoxy for this. Is going to epoxy right there. And I'll cut a piece of motor mount now. And so this is regular motor mount material. And we want to get it cut about yay long. So we'll measure it. I'll glue it, and then I'm going to show you what I do to lighten it up. So we have a mark there. Now I'm kind of lucky. I have a little table saw, X-Acto table saw. I'll just whip this off real quick. Okay, I have a small piece of motor mount here, and we're going to epoxy it right there, and then I'm going to dress it up. So I use 5 minutes. You know, everybody said, well, how can you build so fast? Well, you can use 30 minutes. You can use whatever you want. You can use an hour. You can use a week-long epoxy dry. I don't think it much matters. I've always used 5-minute epoxy, and it seems to work okay for me. So I have this little mixing petri dish. Yeah, this is 5 minutes. A lot of steps to building a model airplane. Okay, now you could glue it on like that, but you don't want to. You want to glue it on like this. You want to capture as much wire length as possible. I mean, if you could get it on like that and get it all the way to the other side, that would be even better. But I know, you know, since the lead outs are coming through there, I don't do that. So use a liberal, I hate to say that, but a whole lot of epoxy on that particular piece. Because that's the piece that's the torsion arm for your landing gear. Put it right on the line. And I say wipe the epoxy off that's on the inside so it sits up tight against the plywood rib. So we're right on the line, as you can see here. And let that dry about 5 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, I've done all the work off camera. The block that we glued on has been sanded to shape. I take it and I angle the edges up like this, take a little weight off of it. This part here is what's glued to the rib, and then of course I put my blind nuts in it, and it looks like that. So now for the second epoxy operation, we're going to glue that in. I've already test fit it to make sure that it fits perfectly in here, and it does. I put the screws in it so no epoxy gets down in the threads, because we're going to smear epoxy all over this the back of this, so that those nuts don't fall out into the wing sometime, in case you have to take the landing gear off. You don't want to be fishing for, cut the wing open just because a nut came off. So we mix up some epoxy. And there we go. I'm going to spread this epoxy on top of these shelves here that are created inside. Push this lead out of the way so it doesn't, I can't, anyway. Hopefully none of the epoxy will drip down on it. And up the sides here, we want a really good joint there. So you want to make sure that you get epoxy on the blind nuts, like I said. Want to capture those. And epoxy on this piece of maple that we just made, that the torsion bar goes in for the landing gear. Use quite a bit of epoxy on there because you want a good bond to the plywood. So there we have all the fixings, and we're going to set this in there like so, and bring it up tight to the plywood rib so that it locks in place. And we'll be back after it dries. Alright, we're going to install the rest of the box now. And as I showed you about using the grain running fore and aft to hold the torsion bar in there, we're also going to use the grain to our advantage in this particular situation. So the grain is running up and down on 1/8 inch balsa, and the 1/8 goes from the top of the sheeting down and contacts the landing gear block. Make sure all these joints are tight. You want nice tight fits. Wick some CA in there. We'll just tack it here. This, using the grain as engineering, helps strengthen up these landing gear areas. I don't have a snorkel on this, but that'll be fine. Now the front one, then again, is straight up and down. All this grain is straight up and down. And I use 1/8 inch there, and I use 3/32 on the ends, on the inboard end where the wire is. We want as much torsional strength as we can get. Then again, with the grain running up and down. And now the 1/8 inch end cap, making sure these are perpendicular to the floor, because you want your gear door to fit in there nicely. You don't want it to wedge in there. You want it to all work together. There we go. Ah! Pushed it too hard. There we go. And wick some thin set CA in on this. Now, I use 80 grit sandpaper to sand these edges off. And if you're not comfortable with sanding next to your sheeting with 80 grit, I'd suggest you put some masking tape on there. Cut a little bit of that off to speed the process up. So I got my sanding block here, and I want to run these, or we'll take the screws out, I guess. Because we epoxied those nuts in, you want to run them in first and then back out, and that'll break the epoxy out of the T-nut. Clean up the threads a little bit. Now, grab the sanding block, and I just rotate, go around this way with it. You know, don't get too aggressive, otherwise you'll have big old sand scratches in your sheeting. When we get the doors made, we'll sand it again. We're just getting it close now, and that will be a perfect match, so to speak. Almost. We're getting close now, so you want to be careful. I don't want any big sand marks in my sheeting from 80 grit. So we'll switch to some 180 here. Bring it down close. And when we get the door on there, I'm not sure this. When we get the door on there, let's see, are we in focus here? And when we get the door on there, we'll be able to sand completely over it with a softer, less aggressive grit, so that it blends in perfectly. You don't want to get too excited right now on this. Now, I don't know if other guys do it a different way or whatever. This is just how I do it. It seems to work pretty good for me. I get the 320. I think that's probably as far as I'm going to go without the door in it. I don't want a flat spot, and I don't want to ruin the sheeting, but here's a high spot here. That's close enough. So put the screws back in it to keep the threads clean. Ah, boy. Well, that's the installation of the wing gear blocks. I have to run to the hobby shop to get some brass tubing to cut these holes for the screws. So we'll do that in another segment. I'll go ahead and post this, and then we'll post the door video as well. But I hope you guys enjoy my There we go. I hope you guys enjoy my Building with Sparky video series. I hope you learned something out of it. Make sure you like, subscribe, share the videos. It takes me more time to make the videos than it does to do the job. So, I know that, that if they're helping you, I'll keep doing them. If not, well, we'll only cover contests and newsreels. So until I see you again, fair winds, tight lines. See ya!